you for this opportunity to address the role of the college in the town's, in the county's finances and planning, and what I hope to really shape that discussion, that conversation going forward. I also want to use the opportunity to address misperception about the college's holdings. It was actually mentioned in this room, and I know that you all have had conversations about that, exactly how much the college owns and what of that is taxed. But I do know that out in the public at large and in the media, there's that misperception still continues. And so you'll see behind you here, and hopefully the members of the audience can see as well, two diagrams. The one on the left shows the tax status of all of the properties, minus, I think there's a 1.5% that we couldn't quite track down. But the key thing to take from that is that everything that you see that's in dark green is exempt, as well as some small parcels that are blue. So you see there's really a lot of exempt property within Chestertown, and about 1/6 of it roughly is exempt in some form or fashion. When you look on the right, this shows you just those properties that belong to Washington College. And the two colors that you see there to indicate whether the property is currently taxed or not. And in fact, from a acreage standpoint, and I know this is would look different if we did it on the assessed value, but at least on an acreage standpoint, Washington College is about 50-50, the share that is taxed versus not taxed. A lot of the properties that you see that are purple are properties that have been acquired in the last few decades. And I can safely say that certainly in the last decade or two, any property that we have acquired, we have left at the tax status that it's had. So we've not removed for any reason any of the properties that we've purchased in recent history. The one, and it's not an exception, but the Board of Education property was already tax exempt, and in that our intent was to build an academic building on it in fairly short order. It was left with that status, but we do pay a lot of taxes. And in fact, after I was at the TEFRA hearing here in November, and I went back to the office to actually look at the reality of things, I was actually somewhat surprised at how much money we have paid the town and the county over the last 10 years. So for example, over $550,000 over the last decade in water and sewer hookup fees. $70,000 to the town specifically for permits. We have paid over the last decade $650,000 in property taxes, and are currently paying over $100,000 in property taxes. I know a lot of that goes to the county, but it is money that is an expenditure to the college that we have to budget for. And in fact, contrary to what some people think, we actually pay hotel room taxes, and in fact have paid over the last decade $30,000 in hotel and room taxes. Our standard with the county and with the town is that if we are hosting an event that is a nonprofit status, that we collect and pay a room tax. If we are obviously our own students or delivering services to, educational services to a nonprofit entity, we do not charge room taxes. Of course, we use something when we pay this bill, but it is surprising to know that we pay, have paid over the last decade $2.2 million in water bills to the town. And again, that's a service that we receive, that we need, and certainly that we should pay for. But I do put that out there to recognize the heft that the college has, because that helps defer some of the fixed costs in utilities delivery, that helps the residents of the town pay a lower rate effectively overall. And when you think about it, add it all up to the town and to the county, we paid over $3 million over the last 10 years. So it's not insignificant, and I don't think it's anything that anybody at the college complains about or feels bad about. Sure, it hurts when you're building a new building and you have to peel off $250,000 to pay for hookup fees, but we recognize that paying those hookup fees not only benefits the college in the direct service that it receives, but it provides much needed funds to the town to do some of these other projects that you simply wouldn't be able to do. And just as an anecdote, my colleague Mike O'Connor and I were looking at the map here, trying to date it. And it's amazing how quickly I could date that just looking at the college, which buildings hadn't been renovated, which buildings hadn't been built. I mean, we've made a very significant imprint on the town in just the time since that's been taken. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but it's striking to me, and that that kind of growth, that kind of addition to the overall basically the overall resources of the town in some form or fashion, and that public oftentimes benefit from those as well as our students, is significant, and it's something that we feel very good about. We feel that part of our partnership with the town is quite good. You know, I will leave it to colleagues who can address this better, but we also feel, you know, that there are many things that don't have dollars directly attached to them. Certainly the role the college plays in attracting citizens to the town, particularly citizens of some means who really benefit from the cultural amenities of the college. I can safely say Heron Point is probably doing as well as it is because it's right down the street from a college where its residents can take classes at WCL, attend cultural events. Again, I think these are all things that we know, but when we take time out in our busy days at the college to think about the little things that we do, just the services that GIS, for example, has provided to the town, and looking at the canopy, the tree canopy in town and other projects, you know, I'll cut to the chase and say, we hope that you recognize that that's very significant. Now, the chart on the left here, if you focus on the areas that are tax exempt, that are not the college and that aren't owned by the town, it does really cause me some concern, not from the college's perspective, but generally speaking for nonprofit entities, about the reasonableness of something like a pilot. I'm thinking, for example, about the University of Maryland medical system and the decisions that they're making. If faced with the addition of a pilot, how would that drive their decision? I'm thinking about the growth in nonprofits, particularly around the arts, but certainly in other areas, education as well. Buildings that are coming online or that already are owned by nonprofits, such as the GAR/Sumner Hall and Sultana, for that matter. Whether this is something that we want to saddle nonprofits that really live, donation to donation, grant to grant. Having this sort of a fee built into what they do would be very difficult for them. And even for the college, one thing I want to stress, I've worked in higher ed finance my whole life. Never have I seen so much money and so little cash in my life. I mean, it's just not money to do things, and I know the town feels the same way. We have a $64 million budget. It seems like, we got to be able to scrape some here or there to be able to help the town out. And I would like for that to be the case. But I'll be perfectly honest, if we have payments to the town that we have to make, short of a windfall that we have, a budgetary surplus or something like that, that is money that we have to pass on to students. And while it may seem a minor inconvenience to ask students to pay $50 or $100 more per year, or whatever the number would be, it's actually a very difficult thing. We did a very bold thing this year, and that is we froze our tuition, and we forced ourselves to live within our means without passing on any additional expenses to students. That's very difficult to do. The students appreciate it, their parents appreciate it, and frankly I think the American taxpayer will appreciate it when those students graduate with that much less debt, burdened with student loan repayment that prevents them from going on and participating as full citizens in our economy. It was the right thing to do, it was a difficult thing to do, but as a result of that, we simply have to delay a great deal of the implementation of our strategic plan. And in fact, this year is the only year, because of some of the enrollment growth that we're anticipating, it's the only year that we'll really have any kind of funds whatsoever to implement initiatives in what's now about a 2.5, 3-year-old strategic plan. I mean, we're not rolling in the dough. Even if we've got a $200 million endowment, most of it is very restricted, and the parts that we can use are already built into our budget. So, we're not Sultana, we're not GAR, but it would be a very difficult thing for us. So, as I started out, I wanted to really, talk about that misperception and really talk about the reality of the thing. So, I think the more important thing to do is to think about ways that we can achieve our goals together. I'm looking at some property that is on the tax rolls that really doesn't do the college any good. Yeah, we're paying taxes on it. The specific one that I'm looking at is the corner of 213 and 291. What can we do there that would allow us to expand the tax base, that would allow us to create jobs, that bring people to Chestertown, that eat in its restaurants, that live in its homes? What can we do with other properties that would allow us to engage private developers to help us build housing that students could live in safely and that we could patrol carefully so that it doesn't disrupt the quality of life in town, but that would put property on the tax rolls and help us out as we're trying, one, to accommodate enrollment growth, and two, to get more of our students in town. When I build residence halls, I build them as far away from town as possible, not because I want to, because that's where the property is. Why aren't we building these things in taxable formats closer to town where students will engage in the life of the town? These are the conversations that we want to have, and I personally pledge everything I can through my role and certainly as a citizen of the town and somebody who I hope you're finding is very involved in the town at a social level as well as just my passions. I know that Sheila and the rest of the college is behind this, and I just want to make sure that as we're thinking about the solutions to the problems that we both have in terms of finances and the need to fix and build and make this place, the college or the town, better, that we think really more about growing the pie and not just figuring out how to fight over the crumbs, which in this case I'm afraid pilot would really amount to. So I appreciate the time. I know that colleagues of mine would be interested in an additional time to talk about some of the programs and services that the college offers. I think that there's great awareness of those programs, but it's also helpful to step back and think not just about you know, what we do for you and what you do for us, but what more we could do for each other, and how this partnership between the town and the college that if you go back to the historical roots of Washington College is almost as old as the town itself.
My take on this, you know, I actually had a doctor's appointment for my son, and there was a Kent County Chamber of Commerce book on like the top 25 employers in the whole county, and the college was number one. I think it was 475 people, give or take, and you were number one by a pretty wide margin. I think the next was the hospital at 430, and then it fell down to Dixon at about 300, and then it went down to like 150 and lower. My take on the college is, I feel like my job is to support you in every way that we can. I think that we do that. I think the fact that we've signed, I want to say 5 different bonds for you guys since 2008, which basically has enabled you to get lower interest rates, which and correct me if I'm wrong, but over the life of all those bonds, we've probably saved you well into the 6 figures in interest payments. That's a meaningful way that we've partnered with you financially. And to me, it all comes down, again, to the money. I don't think anybody here would dispute, as an employer, you're a tremendous economic engine. As an institution that has a meticulous campus and awesome events, you're a tremendous draw. You bring residents here. You have awesome events that send people into our stores, and that's all fantastic. The one caveat I would say is a lot of that revenue doesn't come directly to the town's bottom line. So when we have a blizzard and we've got road crews working around the clock, that comes out of our checkbook. And when there's an incident at the college and our police force is there for a week around the clock, that's kind of a different account. And ultimately with the pilot, I would never ever want to demand any payment from the college that was going to crimp you guys from an operational budgetary standpoint, because that would be counterproductive for me and you. It would create tension between us that I would not want to see. What I would say to the college is, if you are looking for a truly meaningful collaborative partnership with the town, coming up with a creative payment plan that maybe it is a fee that's passed on to the students. When your tuition is 50 grand, I don't see that $100 fee per kid is a huge extra fee. That would spin off 140 grand, using nice round numbers, for us. That's a big chunk of change for us. We could even negotiate what you want us to spend it on. We could spend it directly on infrastructure services that directly benefit you, like the volunteer fire company. As an example, I think the college traditionally gives $1,000 to the volunteer fire company. I think that's a nice PR move, but I think we could probably agree that really doesn't help anybody actually fight fires. We give, I want to say, 40 grand a year to them, and we sign off on all the loans for the trucks. We own the property. We built the hall. That's real money. That is a way that you guys could help us. But ultimately, it's got to come from you. It can't be us banging on your door because it's voluntary. You could just say, we feel like we do enough. We feel like, we're really only 100 some odd acres non-taxable, and the benefits we bring to you pay for themselves. And that, if you said that to us, there's really not much I can do. But what I would say is, if you really want to meaningfully help the town, this is something that I think is worth exploring a little further. Because, if people ask me, why do you guys always just patch the roads instead of pave them? Why don't you spend more money on marketing and invest in marketing? Why haven't you made any improvements at the marina yet? Money, money, money. It's always lack of funding. And if there's a way that we could creatively come up with a way for you to help us a little bit more, as we've helped you by signing off on multiple bonds, it would be very much appreciated, and I think it could be a real, meaningful partnership. So that's my 2 cents. But I want to acknowledge, you're a tremendous economic engine, not just for the town, for the county. I don't think anybody would dispute that. And anybody that does, hasn't been doing their homework, because you're huge, and we need you. We need you not just to survive, but to thrive.